You're listening to episode 6 Personal Perspectives, step 5, removing your limiting beliefs.
I think we as agents have to do a better job inside of our own head of coming from contribution instead of being an inconvenience or a telemarketer type call. We really need to sell ourselves in our own head of we're calling to help, if that's what you're really doing.
Welcome to the Bosley Real Estate Podcast, your guide in creating wealth, leaving a legacy, and winning in real estate. Now, here is your host, Rick Bosley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bosley Real Estate Podcast. My name is Rick Bosley. I am your host today. Thank you for joining us once again. If this is your first time, then we are in step 5. So if you like what you're hearing, or maybe you're confused, then you should be able to go back and listen to the first 4 steps of the 6 personal perspectives. Talks a lot about our mindset, our discipline as business owners, specifically talking real estate, yet so much is applicable to anything you do in life, whether it's running a small business, losing weight, being a better husband or wife or father or son. So today is removing limiting beliefs. Before we go into that, I just want to thank you for being here, and do me a favor, because it really does help us to expand and reach a more global audience. Whatever medium or whatever avenue you're listening to this, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. Leave us a comment. It helps get the word out and be able to touch more people and impact more people's business and lives there. Also, you can follow me on Facebook. You can go to bosleyrick.com, or all of my social media tags are at bosleyrick, and you can check us out of what's happening. I'm a local real estate agent in Orlando and Greater Orlando, Florida. I've been doing this for the past decade. Really enjoying it. I have a passion for teaching, growing, training, and also now helping buyers and sellers with their real estate needs. If anything I can do for you or your friends in the Orlando area, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll make sure we take care of them. All right, enough about that minutia. Let's get into today's conversation. I'm excited to talk and share with you the interview I had with Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson is an agent, been selling houses for about 13 and a half years. His first year, he sold 23 homes. And he was by himself. Now let's fast forward 13 and a half years later. His team will eclipse $100 million in volume, about 250 units with 14 people on his team. He's going to talk to you about how he's been able to overcome his limiting beliefs, because we all have them. We all have a little bit of doubt. We all have a little bit of naysay. We all have a little bit of wondering, is it possible? How do we overcome it? And he is overcoming it every day, every month, and every year. We're going to learn about his discipline of what his morning looks like, his morning routine, how he's communicating with his clients. And if you would like to learn how to have 225 to 250 units with 75% of those referrals and almost all of the business coming from sphere of influence database and events, then make sure you listen for the next 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, that's all for now. And I'm going to let you guys listen to and take your notepad out for Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, and thanks for jumping on. Here we are on step 5, the 6 personal perspectives. This is Rick Bosley, and I'm here and happy to be here with Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. Josh, thanks for jumping on and talk to us about removing your limiting beliefs. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm getting to know you more, and I know Tony Baroni from Tampa made the introduction to us, yet I see why you guys hang out, because you do have some similar principles, ideologies, and mindsets, which we're going to dive into. Before we do, can you give the audience a little bit of background of who you are and where you got started and how you fell into real estate?
Yeah. So I got into real estate in 2006. So April of 2006, I've always been with Keller Williams. And before real estate, I graduated from LSU in finance and economics and worked at an investment bank. And I really, to be honest, wasn't being mentored or challenged, or I wasn't really growing. And so I was getting my real estate license in the meantime because I wanted to buy an investment property. And, I ended up just kind of going full force in it, not knowing when my next paycheck was going to be. And I did my first deal 3 months in, and I was hooked. Like, I was totally addicted to it.
All right, you did your first deal 3 months in. How old were you at this time? Were you pretty fresh out of college?
Yeah, so I was 26, 27. So not far out of college, but I took a little bit longer in college because I was in the Army and I went to Afghanistan for a year. So
wow,
took a little time off of college.
Thank you for your service there.
Yeah.
This is off script a little bit, yet I know you're LSU and I'm a UCF alumni. Are you is there like a hatred towards the SEC and UCF now?
No.
It's all the hype's in our head, huh?
That's right. At least on my end.
At least ask the SEC, right? Okay, we'll get back into real estate now. So 13 and a half years, you did about 23 units your first year. Now in 2006, the floor hadn't quite fallen out of it, right? You're still in that thriving market.
Yeah, I had about a year or 15 months of like seeing a pretty good market. And then I think September of 2007 rolled around and things started getting weird with all the mortgages, and it kind of went downhill from there over the next.
And you're about 6 months behind where Orlando was, because on March 2007, just it got quiet and creepy. So, what was that like? Because what we're talking about now, as we go through 6 perspectives, is removing your limiting beliefs. And if we go through this to step 5, did you have any limiting beliefs that came in once you saw September 2007? Did you ever think, was this a mistake? Should you go back and use your degree? What crept into your head there?
Yeah, I actually think I didn't know any better. I was so new to the industry that I don't know that I knew any better then.
Okay.
Looking back on it, I would say that because I didn't really have any money to do anything, I did the basics really, really well. But I don't think that takes away from, the limiting beliefs of like, why am I lead generating 2 or 3 hours a day? Then it was 2 hours a day when I first got in the business, and then it kind of crept up to 3 hours a day. And it's like, you don't see the fruits of making phone calls for 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day for usually 90 plus days. And so I think there's a lot of agents that get frustrated with that process. And I think you have to be able to withstand and have the wherewithal to kind of continue believing in the fact that what you're doing is the right thing. And I don't know that I knew that then. I just knew that I didn't have any money, and these were the basics that I could come in and do on a regular basis.
Well, and through our interview before we started recording this, you mentioned 2 to 3 hours, and that's still to this day, 13 and a half years later. So that's not you didn't go back to basics. That's not something that you've recently found. That's pretty much been ingrained since day one from you.
I have my schedule for literally almost 15 years has been the exact same in real estate of waking up and working out and getting into the office early and getting prepared for the day and lead generating literally from 8:30 to noon every single day.
So I want to break it down a little bit because, I've been a team leader for 7.5 years. Now I am an agent here in Orlando, yet seeing and hiring over 700 agents. And even still myself, when I'm in the office at 8 o'clock, I'm typically the only one in the office at 8 o'clock. What about your schedule makes you so successful? You're thinking about the habits or the routine that if someone's listening to this and they know they need a change, what could they emulate?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is an agent finding out what schedule is going to set them up to match and mirror their goals and what's going to set them up for success. So for me, it's very kind of redundant and boring, but I think sometimes success is boring and it's doing the consistent things, same tasks over and over and building on them. So it's kind of consistent persistence over time.
Right.
I think the big thing is just like, how do you get to the end of your day and look up and go, did I win the day or did I not win the day? Did it beat me or did I win? And so I'm trying to move my business forward every day, or I work every day to move my business forward like 1 degree.
Well, and so we've heard that, right? Get 1% better. Atomic Habits, what James Cleary talks about that. All the things in the one thing or the miracle morning. What do you do to win the day? When you can go home and you're looking in the mirror and you say, I won today, what have you accomplished?
I've broken mine down to, from a lead generation perspective, mine has just been like, did I set one appointment at the end of the week? I look up and go, did I set one appointment every single day this week?
Okay.
Did we talk to a certain amount of potential candidates for the team? And for me, I'm in a little bit different of a role. I'm a listing agent for the team, and I'm kind of a glorified ISA. So that is still very much what I do, but I'm also doing some management tasks and recruiting and training people for the team also.
Well, let's fast forward and then we'll kind of talk about what happened on the journey to get there. Because this year you mentioned you're going to surpass the 100 million mark in volume at about 2.85 GCI. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
You've got 5 people, including you, selling. with about 9 additional support staff, whether it's virtual or in-house.
Right.
So yeah, your time is, you're also running a pretty massive team with 13 other people relying on your leadership and your vision and your accountability. So how do you stay focused to being the leader, also being the disciplined person who shows up every day? And it sounds like you are leading by example and modeling. What's the mindset you've got to keep intact to keep that focus now for 13 and a half years?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't have negative thoughts or, everybody, those creep in occasionally. And I think that those are going to be things that happen. I think you have to kind of let them creep in and then move past it as quickly as possible. And I think that, with regard to like recruiting and building a team, I never had an intention of building a team in any capacity. I think one of the limiting beliefs or things that I had to learn is building a team, like, are they going to always want me as an agent? Which I completely now, I think that's the biggest, I think it's so funny because I think as agents we go, well, our client wants to work with us. And I completely disagree. I think that they want to see the property, and I think they want to be taken care of at a very high level and have a great client experience. But I don't think that they necessarily need me. And I've proven that over and over because I have 2 girls that have been with me for 7 and 9 years that are actually much better agents than I am.
Well,
and I'm a really good agent. But with that being said, on the buy side of the business, they're way better than I am.
Was that difficult for you to overcome, or is that pretty easy for you to be able to let go of some of your clients when you hired your first sales agent?
Oh, I think initially it was extremely hard for me to overcome, but I think if you're doing a good job of interviewing and onboarding and training, and then you realize what leverage that provides, you're like, oh, that's amazing. But just getting to the point of being able to think through the idea of your clients don't need you is or they don't care who it is. Because I think a lot of agents think that their clients only want to work with them. And I just don't believe that.
Well, that's what we learned in career visioning, that they want to work with the standard which we represent. Yet,
that's right.
Because as soon as our standard drops, they're going to ditch us. Right?
That's right. Yep.
So they really don't need us. Now, you did creep into and explored expansion a little bit. Not that you wouldn't go back, yet you withheld from that. You've mentioned a couple of things just now. You never wanted to grow a team. And then through our pre-interview, you mentioned sometimes, agents will get too fast and too big when their business didn't allow it. Can you elaborate on that a little bit of why you eventually got a team when you said you didn't want it, and then about that expansion and what you learned from that expansion opportunity?
Yeah, and I don't know that I didn't want it. I think that I just didn't know that my business was ever going to be big enough that I wasn't going to be able to support being the agent. I never really got into the business thinking, there weren't really many teams that were like sophisticated, well-oiled machines back in 2006. I actually can't name any that were in Nashville. And I'm not saying they weren't there. I wasn't aware of them.
Sure.
And so I never really had intentions of building a team. At year 3 is when I started getting lots of referrals, or they became more consistent. And it made me realize that, oh gosh, I need a full-time assistant. And
help.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then the next person I'm going to need is a buyer's agent to help service some of these referrals that we're getting. So yeah, that was a, and I love that I've had the opportunity to build a team. But I do think, like you mentioned earlier, I think there's a lot of teams or a lot of agents that want to get in the business and build a team really quickly, and they don't insulate themselves well enough, or they don't build it on a good enough foundation of the basics. And then things change in the economy, or the market shifts, and they've got to get back in production and get right back in there.
So give some advice now to every talented, eager single agent who says, I'm going to grow a team as fast as possible. And you just said, don't do it until you have a strong foundation. How do I know what that looks like if I'm one of those agents?
I would tell every agent, whether you're an individual agent or an individual agent wanting to build a team, I just think that everybody, I think most of us lack patience, and I know I do. And I want it all now. And I've realized looking back over the last 13 years that I did some things really well. And I also wish I had spent more time on some of the systems and processes, or learning scripts better, or just doing some of the things that would have helped us along the way. And our systems are really great, but we're always tweaking our systems, and we're always making our systems better. There's times when a couple months ago we did more than 40 transactions in a month. Well, some of our systems didn't work at 40 transactions in a month.
You broke the wheel.
Yeah, we broke it, and we had to make it big enough to where can we now do 100 transactions in a month before this system breaks again.
When you say you're tracking for 225, doing 40 in 1 month, so you're doing 20% of your volume in a 30-day span. When that happened, or as it's going, or currently what you're fighting with, what are some limiting beliefs you have right now? You're ready to eclipse 100 million, which puts you in the top 1%, if not higher, of agents. So what are you currently struggling with in terms of that limiting belief that you're constantly working in your mindset to battle?
I think, from a mindset perspective, limiting belief wise, I think it's, can we grow it to the size that I want to grow it without giving up culture, without compromising on our client experience? And I know we can. There's just times when it's a challenge of, how do we not let go of the culture that we have? How do we not let go of, we want to keep the client experience high because that's where all of our business comes from. And so are our admin is our admin team good enough? And yes, I think they are. Are our systems good enough? Do we need to go back and tweak those? So it's all those things. Can we take it to the next level and have the same level of service without giving any of that up?
Well, and even in your language, we can tell how your subconscious already thinks, because not one example did you actually say a limiting belief, which says we can't, or it won't work, or we can't grow. Everything was how. And that 3-letter word of how is just so powerful, of going, how do we do 100 units in a month? How do we take our customer experience to the next level, doing 1,200 units in a year?
Yeah.
So I love that. Go ahead.
And when we did 42 transactions, 3 or 4 months ago in a month, I went to the team and I said, all right, guys, everybody crushed it this month. I know everybody's also, a little bit stressed out and all that good stuff, but we crushed it this month. How do we have enough administrative staff? How do we have enough leads? How are all of these things? How can we make this happen every month so you guys crush your personal and professional goals?
Well, and you take it back to their goals, which is that leadership. And we're eclipsing a little bit about, step 2 of E to P, that you broke through a ceiling. And ultimately, you can look at your team and said, we just did it once, which means 42 just became the new floor.
That's right.
We know it's possible. If you can do it once, you can do it again. So what has to duplicate that? I want to talk to you a little bit about some tacticals in your business, because I think there's a lot of just great foundational principles and habits you have that is still sustaining you to a $100 million team. Talk to me about your typical day. You said you wake up, you work out, you get in. Tell me about what that day looks like from alarm clock to done lead genning.
Yeah, so I wake up depending on.
Hold on,
I wake
Josh,
up at 4:37 or 4:42.
I've got a wonky internet connection, so if you see me wave, just do whatever you said over again. So do that again for me. What's that alarm clock look like?
So alarm clock, I wake up. If I'm working out, it's 4:37. If I'm getting up on a normal day, it's 4:42. Very random numbers, I know.
Yeah. Please elaborate on that, because I know that's intentionality.
Yeah. So, well, actually, 4:42 was the original number, and 4:42 was because on the old alarm clocks before we had iPhones, I tried to stop it at 4:40 or 4:45, and it stopped at 4:42. And after doing it for 24-hour cycles, like 3 times, I just stopped at 4:42. And now it's become like a major conversation piece, and everybody jokes like, "Why 4:42?" So.
There it is. So can you work in your story so it's a better story? Or
Yeah, I don't know.
That was perfect.
I grew up on a farm, and I was in the military, so I wake up early. I love getting up early and having a cup of coffee, and then going to work out, doing a 30, 45-minute workout, coming back to the house, the kids are usually up or getting up at that point. And, I take the kids to school, get into the office, and I've got an hour or so before anybody gets here of quiet. I can think, I can listen to podcasts.
What time are you in the office by?
I'm typically in the office by somewhere between 7 and 7:15.
Okay.
And then from there, I check emails, listen to podcasts. Right now I'm rereading the MREI book because we're about to do a couple of Zoom calls on it over the next month.
Love it.
And so good accountability. And then from 8:30 to noon, I'm in the office every day, lead generating. My doors are locked, and I'm just making phone calls, all outbound phone calls. And then my afternoons used to be extremely structured. I've loosened them up a little bit to where I can have meetings with the team or team members, listing appointments, masterminding, things like that.
Podcast interviews for me.
Podcast interviews.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
You said 75% of your business comes through referrals, whether agent or past client or sphere of influence. That's about 165 closings this year from referrals.
Right.
How big is your database to feed you that referral base?
So our database is pretty big. There's probably, when you look at our actual database, there's probably 7,500 people in our database, but I would tell you there's probably 1,500 to 2,000 that we're talking to their past clients on a regular basis. And we do, when our clients close on a property, we do housewarming parties, and we do, 4 client events a year. We used to do more than that. There were some micro events and happy hours. We've just kind of pulled it back to 1 a quarter.
Yep.
It's either a movie, it's a really nice dinner for our top 40, like all the referrals that we get that are local.
Sure.
We have a top 25 and a top 50. We have one family event, and that might be, the family event has been movies, it's been bowling alley, it's been a fall festival. So it's really just getting back into our database and like loving on our database, trying to add as much value to our database as possible, and just being a resource for them when they need a handyman or a contractor, or they just have questions about, hey, can you send me my Alta statement from closing,
right?
But for taxes, tax purposes, just adding as much value and being a resource for them.
Be present, be value. So it sounds like you're following the 36 to convert of at least a quarterly phone call. 3 face-to-face events are there. You've upped it to 4. Around those events, you have emails, invitations, text, social media, more calls. So if I'm Rick and I'm in your database because I happen to be a B and I'm up on your quarterly call, what does that sound like? I've not done any of your events. I've done any of your replied emails. I've kind of just, as a past client 4 years ago, and that's it. Are you keeping me in the loop? And what does that sound like?
Yeah. A lot of my calls at this point are really they're just kind of check-ins. They're not, I'm probably not as hardcore on asking for business. It's more, hey, sometimes it might be on a Monday. It's, hey, Rick, it's Josh over at the Anderson Group. I was just calling to touch base. Happened to be in your neighborhood yesterday, driving through, showing a couple of properties, and it just made me think about you. I was just calling to see how you're doing, see how the house is, see if you guys need anything.
So we have that good catch-up talk, and then you're going to ask me for a business or no, or maybe depends on the conversation. I lost you.
It depends on the conversation, and I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that really just depends on the conversation, and it also depends on what. I don't do it every phone call. Yeah. I mean, I certainly mention, hey, if there's anybody else that we can help. I don't go through on every phone call, who do you know looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate.
Yep.
I think that's a little bit too robotic for me.
Sure.
And I do it maybe 1 or 2 out of those 4, or we send something out that's, who do you know, or we have a contest for reviews or referrals, and give things away.
And I forget who taught this. Might have been Gene Rivers where I heard this somewhere. But everyone has their bank, and I make a deposit and I make a withdrawal, right? And if all I ever do is call and ask, I'm constantly withdrawing. I'm going to overdraft that relationship.
Deposit more than you withdraw always.
Yep, absolutely. So a limiting belief that I have is you've got to go smaller if you want to have quality conversations and touches. You've got 2,000 people Is that who you are personally calling, or is that spread out through your team?
It's spread out, but honestly, I've done so many of the phone calls for so long, and that's where so much of our business. And so I've continued to do it. It's one of my struggles right now of can I pass that off somewhat? And it's not. I don't know that it's a limiting belief because I believe that we can. I think it's just figuring out how do we do it.
There's that word again, right? That three-letter word.
And so I know that I can make at least one or two of those phone calls. Mm-hmm. How can I get a concierge ISA or someone from the office to make those other 2 phone calls a year? And they're really easy phone calls. I mean, with 4 client events a year, they should be really simple. And I think that the other thing, whether we're talking about client events or we're just talking about agents, I think we as agents have to do a better job inside of our own head of coming from contribution instead of being an inconvenience or a telemarketer type call. We really need to sell ourselves in our own head of we're calling to help, if that's what you're really doing. If you've got commission breath, people are going to know it.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're really coming from contribution and you really want to help a family, I think it becomes apparent. Because if I wasn't wanting to help you or come from contribution, I wouldn't have been calling you and leaving you voicemails and talking to you and sending you these postcards and inviting you to our client events for the last several years.
Well, I love that you brought that up because it does creep into my head as well. You know, old college friends or people I've been friends with for a long time, all of a sudden I'm now calling asking for business. It feels not always great. Well, stop asking for business and start adding value and say, hey, Josh, I wanted to check in. I haven't talked to you in several years. I'm in real estate and I've got several connections with handymen and contractors and just wanted to see how you're doing, how I can help you. That's it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've said, kind of a jab, punch.
Yep.
You add value, and then you can ask for business.
Deposit, withdrawal. Yep, I love that. So in terms of efficiency, 8:30 to 12, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic yet, not really, because mindset and limiting beliefs is so much around lead gen, and lead gen is the gas that makes every vehicle drive, right? So we are diving into this. What is your efficiency in 3.5 hours? How much of that is actual prospecting? How much of that is prepping to prospect, database entry, or is it just kind of one blanket go?
Oh, I don't do any of that. It's all outbound phone calls. So I literally log in and it tells me who to call. So okay. I have a separate list that I make the night before of people that I either need to call back or somebody that popped in my mind. So I've got that list, but I've got my.
You make that list?
I make that list because it's people that, I might have talked to you, Rick, and in that conversation, me and you talked about 3 of our mutual friends that I want to call, and they might not be on my automated call list for the next day.
Got it.
So I've got 2 lists that I call. I'm adding notes as I'm on the phone with them. I'm adding in notes, or I'm making notes, and then I'm handing it to my administrative team to drop it into our CRM and update it. Hey, put this guy on a follow-up call for 90 days and 6 months.
You just give them legal pad and say, here you go. Yep. And so how many?
I know that they really love that, but it's my system and it works.
Your name's in the team, right? So you get to do that. How many contacts do you make in those 3.5 hours?
So I'm making around 20 contacts.
Okay.
And so, I could probably, for the sake of contacts, I could probably do more. I'm trying to have real conversations, and I see some people that can make, and I think this is also not a limiting belief, but where people get frustrated with like a bold 100.
Sure.
Bold 100 it's aggressive.
It's a 12-hour day.
And if you're having a serious, real conversations with somebody, not just hey, I was just calling to check in, oh, I got to go, and you're really having a conversation, a bold 100's, you feel like you just had a 12-round match with Mike Tyson.
It is daunting. Well, I imagine of those 20 conversations, it takes 80 dials or so.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what you've got lined up there. So you mentioned one of the biggest challenges people have is they just don't or decide they don't or won't lead gen for 2 to 3 hours. So someone who's listened to that, and this is a little bit of just you're coaching me. This is pretty cool. As we come in, what about lead genning from 2 to 3 hours is such a challenge for agents? It's only 3 hours out of the day. It's only 15 hours a week.
I think my statement to that is always you make time for what's important for you and your business or your loved ones or whoever it is. And so I struggle with, you don't have 3 hours a day. What else are you doing for the 3 hours? Like, I don't understand. I don't have time, or the good intention. If you don't do it in the morning, the likelihood of it being done in the afternoon before you go home is extremely low. And so I just struggle with, you don't have, okay, if you don't want to do it for 3 hours, start with 30 minutes. Make 7 phone calls.
Right.
And that means you're probably going to get on 2 contacts that day. Do it for a week, and then go to 12 phone calls, and then go to 15 phone calls, and build it up over time where 2 or 3 hours isn't a big deal. But I don't know what else you're doing in real estate if you don't have time for 2 or 3 hours. If you don't have time for that and you're showing properties, that means your business is going to be like this. I mean, just super cyclical.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The only people who might get away with it is if they've hired someone else to do it for them, right? So they're out there listing 4 and 5 houses a day. So your business allows that. Because I'm really good at.
Even with that, I would say the very last thing that you outsource is your lead generation and your lead follow-up.
Were you at Mega Camp last year?
Yep.
Not a month ago, but 13 months ago. So there's a chart, and I can't draw it here, but I'll do this. There's the pyramid. And they talked about the first thing you do as an agent is you lead gen, and you lead gen for listings, and listings create buyers, and those buyers create contracts, which creates admin. Then your first hire is admin, your second hire is buyer's agent, your third hire is listings, and then your last thing you ever get rid of is lead gen. And so you're like a walking billboard for MREA.
It's kind of like it's like the cycle of life. I mean, you become a baby, and it's like the whole.
You end up in diapers and start off in diapers, right?
That's right. And you start with lead generation and lead follow-up, and you end with lead generation and lead follow-up.
Anyone listening to the podcast now, we're throwing out a lot of what we call Kellerisms, Keller Williams language. The MREA is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book written by Gary Keller, which essentially is the blueprint or the manual to grow a team, not even a team, to have a thriving business, to become a millionaire real estate agent. So I want to make sure we cue in the audience for that. Hey, Josh, I'm really good at math. You said 20 a day, 5 days a week is 100, which is what they teach you in BOLD. And it's interesting because BOLD for you isn't rigorous. It's just normal, and you're doing it in 2 to 3 hours.
I think that it's just what works. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I could have probably changed it up, and I think agents get really shiny object syndrome, and I think that lead generation and lead follow-up becomes very boring and monotonous, but at the end of the day, it still works. So I never changed it, and I think that I think agents, again, I think it's kind of boring. It's not boring. My business is not boring. The tasks that I do on a daily basis.
Monotony is boring.
Yeah.
Probably going to the gym every day at 5 a.m. gets pretty monotonously boring.
Yeah.
Which is why you're one of the only ones there.
Yeah, there's definitely other things I could be doing at 5 a.m. like sleeping or.
Yes. Well, it's a good reminder for myself because I've been seeing the 6 o'clock here a little bit, and I'm feeling it because my days are just rushed in the morning. So, and that starts football season's tough because I'm up 3 and 4 nights a week.
That's right.
Past my bedtime. I want to kind of close a little bit with something that was extremely impressive, which was your margins. 45% is about the margins that you've been and that you've stayed. And I wanted to close with that. I think very few people talk about their profit. All they talk about is their volume. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you've been able to keep such high margins. You had a couple of reasons why. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so 2018, our profit margin was 46.3%, and it is largely due to the fact that I call my database, and also because I'm still in production. So I'm still the listing agent or the primary listing agent for my team, and I think obviously when you get out of production, your margins go down, and when you start buying internet leads, Zillow leads, whatever it is, your margin continues to also go down. And we don't need any more clients necessarily. I love the clients that we have. We love loving on them. I love doing client events. if we get more clients out of it, great. But we could never have another new client and still do 250 or 300 transactions a year just by working our database. So I don't see a reason to go continue to buy leads and start. It's easier to keep a client than it is to continually go buy a new or acquire a new client.
What I think what you just said is so many people's limiting beliefs that they feel to be successful, you have to go buy your database and buy leads. And you're just, if you have one person in your database, start with that person and ask for who they know and ask for who they know. And it becomes a snowball effect.
That's right.
Josh, how can people follow you, find you, get in touch with you, send you Nashville referrals? How can we stay in touch?
Yeah, you guys can visit me at my website. It's joshandersonrealestate.com, and or you can email me, or you can email my assistant to get in touch with me. It's info@joshandersonrealestate.com.
Josh Anderson Real Estate. You service all of Nashville, any greater areas outside of Nashville?
Yeah, so we service all of Middle Tennessee, which is 8 or 9 counties, but it's all within about a 45 minutes radius around Nashville. So Hendersonville and Brentwood and Franklin, Nashville proper, downtown.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Rapid fire. You said you wake up every morning. You do your kind of your meditation, your podcast, and your books. What's things you're listening to right now and or most impactful in the last 12 months?
Well, rereading the Millionaire Real Estate Investor right now, and it's really cool to reread it. And I actually just sent Gary an email this morning as I was reading it, telling him that I'm really enjoying rereading it because it's been 3 or 4 years since I've read it. And the same things happened with the MREA book. Every time I read it, which has been 10 or 11 times now, I highlight with different colors and something slaps me across the face every time. It's because my business is in a different spot each time. And it's really, I enjoy that piece of it. But the MREI, I'm really, over the last 4 years, I've been buying a lot of investment properties. And so talking about and thinking about net worth and things like that has been really eye-opening. So I would tell everybody that hasn't read that or hasn't read it in 4 or 5 years, and you're thinking about investment properties, pick that up. It's
perfect.
Cool.
Well, and you just gave a good segue, so I might ask you back on here so we can talk about investment strategies. This podcast is also for, investors and buyers, that sort of thing. So I'd love to bring you back once this series is done.
Perfect.
And, man, I appreciate getting to know you more, and you're certainly my go-to person now in Tennessee. Is there anything I can do for you right now?
That's it, man. I appreciate the opportunity, and if you guys ever need anything, just let me know.
I will. Thanks so much, Josh. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye.
And cut. Right on, man. That was awesome.
Perfect.
Appreciate it. It was honestly, I started going just in coaching mode, or receiving coaching mode.
Yeah.
Because, with command, I let that be my excuse for a little bit of, I can't make the calls because command's not fluid, and I'm going, just get over it and do it. And I've got 2,500 people in my database, and I'm going, how the hell do I start with 2,500? Well, at A, right? that's how you start.
That's what we've been doing. I don't think command is going to be ready for us as a team to really use for quite a while, but we're going ahead and putting people in there, and I'm calling them as we're putting them in there, and we're labeling them. Yep. Our labels are really good for our CRM, but what I've been doing is like, all right, who are our past clients that live out of state versus past clients in state? Mm-hmm. The worst thing I get as an agent is like 20 other agents around the country, same email or same newsletter. And, it's like, I know my past clients living out of state probably
don't care about Middle Tennessee real estate.
It's not relevant. If it is, they'll reach out to me because we still call them.
Yep.
But it's just, getting really dialed into who are the orphan leads, who are our past clients, who are our past. So we've been labeling them from a year, like past client 2018, past client 2019, investor clients, divorce attorneys, probate attorneys, just where we can go in and so easily. And I know that sounds silly, but we're just digging deeper into it.
Well, it's all of the tags, and you've gone even deeper. How do you go into orphans? Tell me about that.
So what we did, and we're revamping it to start again, but it's crazy. I read a statistic several years ago. It was like, 84% or something like that of people would be willing to use their agent again, but only like 24, 25%.
Less than that, yeah, no doubt.
It made me think, God, we sell so many. I'm the listing agent on so many properties, and so many of those people never hear from literally from the time we close, they never hear from their agent ever again. I could pick up an extra 30 or 40 deals a year if I just stay in touch with those people.
And you just cold resource, find their information. You already know where they live. You already know their name.
We typically either drop something off or, just saying, hey, thanks for being a great, on the buyer side of the business. Thank you for making an easy, great transaction. If we send them a referral box that's $10 and drop it off at their front door, then that way, typically we can find their email address. We can find their phone number, things like that. It's pretty simple these days.
Yeah, I love it. I might steal that. All right, man. Well, I'll let you get going. It's I got to get home to my kids. I have a 4. How old are your kids? You said
7 and 9.
Yeah, I've got a 4, 2, and 1-year-old.
Wow.
We start T-ball practice in an hour and 50 minutes. So
awesome.
Sports now begin.
Yeah, Tony and I talk about that a lot. We've got them in baseball, and it's a lot. I never realized how much my parents do until you become a parent. What your parents sacrificed, run you all over town. It's crazy.
Yep, right on. All right, man. Well, best of luck and congrats on a good year. Take care.
Okay. See you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for taking the time. I trust you got as much information and value from that interview as I did. Josh and his team is brilliant. I love the discipline. And he said it 2 or 3 times. I'll say it a 4th. It needs to be consistently monotonous and boring. If we don't have time to lead generate for 2 to 3 hours a day, where else are we spending our time? He's been doing it from day one. He's doing it now, and it's the last thing he's going to give up as long as he is in the real estate industry. So take a hard look at your schedule. What time does it start? What time does it end? What time are you being productive? What time are you feeding and growing your business? I follow this myself. Of sometimes we look at the clients we have, we make appointments, and we let it interrupt our lead generation time. And that's where you can see the roller coaster start, where we have a really great month, and the next month is not so great. So really take a look in the mirror, look at your business and say, does my schedule match my goals? It's business planning season because we're right now at the fall, winter of 2019 going into 2020. Many of us have written a strong business plan with big goals. And if our schedule does not match those goals, and if we're not going to change our behavior, then how do we expect to get different results? So thank you so much for listening. Next week, we'll conclude our journey here for the 6 personal perspectives. We're going to wrap it up with accountability, with operating principle, MAPS bold coach, former team leader, former broker, Richard Carpentieri from the Lake Nona, Orlando area. He's a good friend of mine and happy to close out the 6 personal perspectives. So make sure you join us for next episode, and you can easily just subscribe to the button. That way you'll notify when it's done. Until then, have a great day, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.
You've just listened to the Bosley Real Estate Podcast, where we create wealth, leave legacies, and win in real estate. Follow and subscribe on social media at tagline Bosley Rick. Thank you for listening.